John McTiernan is perhaps one of the most striking examples of a talented director whose career suddenly took a nosedive. And not just a little. He fell so hard that hardly anyone remembers him anymore. Yet the creator of Die Hard and Predator was once one of the most sought-after and respected directors in Hollywood. McTiernan's career began with a small film called Nomads, starring a young Pierce Brosnan who would later become James Bond. The film wasn't a great success, but it still caught the attention of producers at 20th Century Fox. They offered McTiernan the director's chair for Predator, a film conceived as a response to Alien. It's hard to say how much credit he personally deserves for Predator becoming a classic and introducing one of the most famous and recognizable characters in cinema. After all, he was initially willing to shoot the film with the alien hunter looking like some kind of bug-eyed giraffe straight out of a 1960s B-movie instead of the now iconic creature we all know. On the other hand, it was McTiernan who made the crucial decision to fire Jean-Claude Van Damme, despite Predator producer Joel Silver believing Van Damme was perfect for the role. Silver wanted the hunter to be an agile acrobat, but when McTiernan saw how Van Damme looked on screen next to Schwarzenegger, he asked the Belgian actor to leave. There's another version of events, though. Rumor has it that Van Damme, a relative unknown at the time, didn't initially realize his face wouldn't be seen in the film. When he found out, he reportedly forced the studio's hand by demanding that his name be placed alongside Schwarzenegger's in the credits. This didn't sit well with Silver either, so Van Damme was let go. We may never know which version is true. In any case, while the filmmakers scrambled to find a replacement for the agile Belgian, special effects artist Stan Winston happened to run into director James Cameron. During their conversation, Cameron suggested a new design for the alien hunter and even sketched its now iconic mandibles on a piece of paper. Winston and Cameron had worked together on Aliens, where Winston was responsible for designing the xenomorph. After Predator's $15 million budget turned into a $100 million global box office haul, everyone wanted McTiernan to become Hollywood's go-to action director. He resisted, repeatedly turning down Die Hard, believing the script was too simple, boring, and destined to fail. However, after numerous script revisions and persistent persuasion from Silver, with whom he had developed a strong working relationship, McTiernan finally agreed. The result? Another iconic movie hero, John McClane, and arguably one of the greatest movie villains of all time, Hans Gruber, who helped set the trend for witty yet ruthless antagonists. With a budget of $28 million and a worldwide gross of $140 million, Die Hard cemented McTiernan's reputation as one of Hollywood's top commercial directors. His next film, The Hunt for Red October, was even bigger. Its $200 million global box office earnings propelled McTiernan into Hollywood's top tier, giving him final cut rights and the authority to fire actors simply because he didn't like them. In 1991, McTiernan was offered the chance to direct a sequel to The Hunt for Red October, which would follow the next adventure of Jack Ryan. He was open to the idea until he learned that the main villains in Patriot Games would be Irish. Because of his own Irish heritage, McTiernan refused to direct the film. His decision had a ripple effect. Alec Baldwin, who had played Jack Ryan in Red October, also declined to return for a film portraying the Irish as villains. As a result, the role of Jack Ryan went to Harrison Ford, and Philip Noyce stepped in as director. Meanwhile, McTiernan decided to take on something more personal. That's how Medicine Man, starring Sean Connery and Lorraine Bracco, was born. The failure wasn't catastrophic, but it was McTiernan's first real misstep, and he took it hard. He blamed everyone around him, primarily the studio, which, in his view, had misrepresented the film in its marketing campaign, focusing on elements that weren't even in the movie. His frustration was understandable. Columbia Pictures had indeed promoted Medicine Man as an action film starring Sean Connery, where various villains kept interfering with his research. In reality, Medicine Man wasn't an action film at all. That said, the film itself was uneven, and even the right marketing strategy likely wouldn't have saved it at the box office. If anything, it might have made things worse. There are various explanations for why the film underperformed. McTiernan himself believed the visuals suffered because the shoot took place in a different location than originally planned. He had hoped to film Medicine Man in the same jungle where he shot Predator, But at the time, those locations weren't available. Others point to the film's bloated $40 million budget, driven by Sean Connery's massive salary and some questionable production choices. For instance, the production team transported elements of South American flora and fauna to the Mexican filming location, even bringing in indigenous people from South America. Following Medicine Man, McTiernan suffered another unexpected failure. This ultimately led him to agree to direct the third Die Hard film, despite previously vowing never to return to the franchise. He had already turned down Die Hard 2, which ended up being directed by Rennie Harlin. His second failure was Last Action Hero. While the film became popular in some countries, it completely bombed in the U.S. If anyone had hoped it might eventually gain cult status or wider recognition, that never happened. Even 30 years later, it's still considered a failure for both Arnold Schwarzenegger and John McTiernan in the U.S. and Europe. Some blame Schwarzenegger for the film's shortcomings, as he insisted on making significant changes to the script to make his character more human. In the original version, his character was a stereotypical dumb jock who remained clueless until the very end. Critics also pointed to the inclusion of a cartoon cat and the decision to make Danny Madigan much younger than originally intended. These changes led many people to assume the film was aimed at very young children, and as a result, they ignored it. Schwarzenegger and McTiernan, however, have consistently blamed Columbia Pictures for the film's failure. In interviews, McTiernan has been especially vocal in criticizing the studio. Last Action Hero was scheduled for release just 1 week after Steven Spielberg's Jurassic Park, which went on to dominate the box office for over a month. While this might seem like an unfortunate coincidence, many people involved in the production claim that the studio had been repeatedly warned about the disastrous timing and urged to change the release date, advice that was ignored. Last Action Hero received 6 Golden Raspberry Award nominations, including Worst Picture, Worst Director, Worst Actor, Worst Original Song, Worst New Star, and Worst Screenplay. While some of the criticism was warranted, the film arguably didn't deserve such harsh treatment. In 1995, McTiernan directed what many consider to be his last great film, Die Hard with a Vengeance. John McClane's return was big, entertaining, and financially successful. However, Die Hard fans of the first 2 movies never forgave the third installment for abandoning the confined setting in favor of a citywide adventure. After that, things took a turn for the worse. First, The 13th Warrior, a project McTiernan had worked on for years alongside Michael Crichton, flopped spectacularly. Due to constant behind-the-scenes drama and reshoots, the film's budget ballooned to $160 million, an enormous sum at the time. The failure was almost inevitable, with the movie grossing only $60 million at the box office. Then came The Thomas Crown Affair, a moderately successful project that reunited McTiernan with Pierce Brosnan. This film could have revived his career, but immediately afterward he released Rollerball, a disaster so massive it's hard to believe it was made by the same director. Following Rollerball's resounding failure, McTiernan directed only one more film, Basic. That too flopped, though in this case the material itself likely carried little commercial potential. McTiernan had several other projects in the works, some of them fairly ambitious. However, his career was derailed by the highly publicized Anthony Pellicano scandal. Pellicano, a private investigator, had been illegally wiretapping numerous Hollywood figures, including Rollerball producer Chuck Roven. McTiernan was implicated as one of Pellicano's clients. As a result, in 2010, McTiernan was sentenced to 1 year in prison, a relatively light punishment, considering he had initially faced up to 5 years. Pellicano, who was accused of far more serious crimes by numerous powerful figures in Hollywood, received a 15-year sentence. The last known update on McTiernan's career was that he was working on an action film titled Warbirds. However, given the lack of any recent news, it seems unlikely that the project will ever make it to production. Thanks for watching. Subscribe and stay tuned.